Back and better than ever. Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. Take two on this Wednesday evening. Apologies for any technical difficulties over here. Like I said, Dominic is being the MVP tonight, running the show valiantly. We're just talking about, after this little glitch or whatever, Joe makes it look so easy.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Makes it look so easy.
But let's I guess get to our tributes here because we will be
might as well dive right into it. Like I said, we're talking Tarantino buying the LA Theater at the end of the LA Vista Theater. At the end of the show, we got the Summer of Soul review in the midsection. And now we will talk briefly about the great Richard Donner, who passed away at the age of 91 on the 5th of July. Now, Richard Donner is Hollywood royalty, to say the very least. This is a man who had a directing career going all the way back to 1961, and he's directed movies. I think you might have heard of some of these movies. Wouldn't you agree, Dominic? He directed the original Omen movie back in 76. He directed Superman and Superman 2 as well. He also, technically the director's cut of Superman 2 on that. The Goonies, the Lethal Weapon films, as well as other ones like Scrooge with Bill Murray, Maverick with Mel Gibson. He has directed a boatload of different movies, to say the least. His last movie, I was kind of surprised by this, was 16 Blocks. That was back in 2006.
16?
That was his last directed movie.
That
is the movie with Bruce Willis and Mos Def.
Okay.
Which actually got better reviews than I remembered.
2006. But in any case, when I heard the name, like when the flash came across my phone, it's like, hey, Richard Donner passed away. It's like, it's not a name that you immediately, if you're not a film, and even for me, I'm not the biggest film buff in the world, but like the name didn't immediately register. And then I looked up his filmography. I was like, oh yeah, shoot, he's just one of those directors that you don't appreciate until now they are gone. And yeah, Lethal freaking Weapon, revive the buddy cop, the quintessential buddy cop film, and yeah, the freaking Goonies. What? Honestly, the two Superman movies that I actually like, and beyond that, like I really like Superman 2. It's those movies are so ridiculous, but they are so quintessential 70s, and they are just so. Was it 70s or 80s? I thought it was 70s.
70s.
Yeah, 70s. And I have kind of a soft spot. And if someone tells me those movies are not that great, I will not fight them, but I will disagree with them. But in any case, yeah, dude, just one of those that you don't appreciate until the day that they leave us.
It's very true. Richard Donner, again, like I said, not a household name, but definitely, a resume that demands attention too. I mean, one of the movies too that I noticed that was on here that I really want to see now, I was trying to figure out the exact name of it over here. It was I'm trying to make sure I get the name right on this one. There was a movie that he did in like the 70s with Linda Blair where she's a teenage alcoholic. And I've never seen it. And I just kind of was reminded of it just with Richard Donner's passing. That's going to be one that I check out, fairly soon.
Who's in it?
Linda Blair.
Okay.
Linda Blair, who you might remember. It's called Sarah T, Portrait of a Teenage Alcoholic. Linda Blair, You might remember the Exorcist movies she was in. You might remember those. She was the woman in the Exorcist movies. She didn't live a very long life either. She did not live a very, or I take that back. I'm thinking of the Poltergeist woman. Linda Blair is still alive and well. Screwing this one up over here. Not her. I'm thinking of I don't know why I think of her as the Poltergeist lady. I don't know why. What's wrong with me? But yeah, Sarah T, The Portrait of a Teenage Alcoholic. That was one of his earlier movies back in like 75. This was even before the Superman movies. And then you also had like The Toy with Richard Pryor. He's directed a bunch of things. It's very sad to hear of his passing though. But at 91, what a career. I think the other just surprising fact is that he hadn't directed since 15 years ago. That was kind of surprising too.
I mean, sometimes not necessarily cash out, but just kind of like bow out. Look, after Lethal Weapon 4, you don't need to make anything better than that in your whole life because that is peak cinematic experience. Like, eat your heart out. Every other director. No, but honestly, I have a weird soft spot for Lethal Weapon 4 because that was when I started like appreciating more martial art movies more. Particularly Jet Li was one of them. Jackie Chan, of course, was the big one, but Jet Li was not far behind. And Lethal Weapon 4 has my funniest bit out of any Lethal Weapon movie. I need to rewatch. I think I've skipped like 3, which I think was the one with Joe Pesci. But
I need to go back and watch those again. It's been
but
a
Lethal
while.
Weapon 4 specifically sticks out of my mind because there's a scene where the gang is the good guys are chasing, I think, a guy who works at a Chinese restaurant, and they start chasing him, and he starts running, and then when they like after an extended sequence of them doing chase stuff or whatever, they finally catch him, and then it's like okay, you know the bad guy, right? And it's like, no, I don't know the bad guy. Well, what? How do you? We were chasing you. Yeah, but you. What? No. You were running. Why were you running? I was like, yeah, we were. I was running because you were chasing me. I was like, I work at the restaurant. That's it. I'm just a normal dude who works at the restaurant. Like, you know the restaurant? And I think Chris Rock. He's in these movies, right? Yeah. He comes in and is like, oh yeah, you work at the restaurant? What's on the menu? And then he goes, oh, orange chicken, wonton soup. And he just starts listing off all these Chinese foods. And it's so fun. I didn't do it justice, but it's just so fun. I think it's on YouTube, but that clip is so good. When I was little, I think I replayed that like 5 times because it caught me off guard on like, just like the bait and switch of like, yeah, we had this chase for no reason. And this guy, we just chased him, whatever.
I need to go back and see those movies again. You've kind of motivated me to look into them. Rest in peace, Richard Donner, though. Passed away at the age of 91. What a career he leaves behind, though. And it's good people are getting to know his name because it's like you think the director of the Goonies in the first 2 Superman movies, technically the second Superman, the very much maligned or the much discussed and much publicized Richard Donner cut of that movie. You think that he would be more of a household name.
This is no cap whatsoever, but looking through the pictures that I've put on the screen so far, it's like, damn, he like hit an age and then just like stopped aging there. Like he always looked.
He did.
If you look at pictures of him young, it's like, did you just put a wig on him and then he just stopped aging forever?
Yeah, he was a good looking guy. He was
not a bad looking guy.
He retained it. You gotta.
But it's almost like he aged
it.
a little faster and then stopped there, so he never got older beyond that. It's just one of those situations. Not bad looking.
Yeah, like he was older than he looked when he was younger.
Yeah.
And then he froze, and then he like, what I mean, like made up for all that lost time,
right,
or all that advanced time. We'll move forward, however, because I know Dom wants to talk about this. I guess I'll throw it over to you to start this because we're both, I think we're both pretty jazzed, no pun intended, about this movie, Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised. Now in theaters, now streaming on Hulu. You're probably in an area where you're going to have to watch it on Hulu, though, because it's not really in theaters a ton of places. I was kind of pissed off because I realized my area, it's like an hour and a half away from me, but Peoria actually had it on in the theater.
Oh.
And if I had known that, like not on the day, because on Saturday I just watched it in the morning, but like if I'd known that, I might have made the trek down to watch this in a theater because I think that would have been a cool experience to say the least.
For sure.
But if you haven't heard of it, Summer of Soul is now streaming on Hulu and in theaters. It is directed by Amir Thompson, also known as Questlove, a member of the hip hop group The Roots. Essentially, what this movie revolves around is a documentary on the 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival. Have you not heard of the Harlem Cultural Festival? Not many people have, disappointingly so. That's why this documentary, one of the many reasons it's so important. It's essentially the Black Woodstock. It's referred to that several times because you think about 1969, the pivotal year that it was, and we'll dive into that probably later on. And it was the same year as Woodstock, but it got none of the media coverage. But this was a massive summer-long concert event that had some 300,000 people attending over the duration of time, mostly, if not all, African Americans. I think one of the wilder stories to emerge out of this is that the Harlem police, would not patrol this and have security. So they were enlisted in Black Panthers to secure this thing.
I was just about to say this.
Stranger than fiction.
This could not be and I mean this lovingly, this could not be like a blacker festival. You know what I mean? Just in the roster.
Seriously.
The security were Black Panthers. B.B. King, Nina Simone, Sly and the Family Stone, Stevie Wonder were all there. And this is just a sea of proud Black people just living up this music. And we never heard of it. I have never heard of it. Like, no, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people attended this thing. And of course, they probably talked about it, but no one in the media that I've ever recognized. Because, Steve, tell me, in your history books, was there mention of Woodstock in the 60s portion?
Sure.
Yeah,
sure, because it fit right in. It fit right in then. The story of Woodstock fit right in. And it's funny because I'm reading Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which takes place around the same time. It fits in right with the hippie countercultural movement. And it's almost like you cannot tell the story of the 60s, of Vietnam, of civil rights without mentioning Woodstock, because it's so inextricably linked with the free love and hippie movement of the time. It's wound itself and weaved itself into the annex of history in that regard, and the Harlem Cultural Festival, by all accounts too, it was filmed. Obviously it was filmed, and outside of a local New York TV station, it was never broadcast. Nobody had any interest in doing anything with this footage. It sat in a basement. What basement? I don't know. They keep referencing this basement, but they never tell you what basement. That's what I was
hoping to find out. It's like, God.
This thing, they don't tell you what basement, and it kind of pisses me off. But like the footage sat in a basement for 5 decades completely unused. And I just got to say, first off, with this movie, it's not super hard to see if you're going to like this movie, but I'm going to say this. If names like The Fifth Dimension, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Stevie Wonder, Nina Simone, Mahalia Jackson, B.B. King, Stevie Wonder, if these names don't excite you, I don't think we could be friends, because this is capital M music right here. This is capital M music.
It really, to call it first of all, to call it the Black Woodstock is actually kind of accurate, just because it's not just a random collection of Black artists who happened to be doing it at the same time as Woodstock. No, these were the artists. These were pivotal artists of their time and for the decades to come. Like Stevie Wonder was, by then he was already well established, but they go into it how he takes his career would take on so many transformations after this, and we really are seeing like the first 1 or 2 phases of it. And so many others who would go on in the 70s and 80s. And it's like, this is quintessential. Like it's so weird that like we celebrate Motown so much, and rightfully so, but this never got mentioned. No one outside of the Black community really heard of this thing. Many members of the Black community, from what I've seen online, haven't heard of this thing. And I don't know, man. It's astounding, and but it's also like not good to call it Black Woodstock because it took place before Woodstock.
It predated Woodstock. That was the even crazier thing.
Before and after.
Yeah,
it just kept going.
Yeah, and the thing is, you really feel the gravity of this thing, because it opens and kind of closes with like people recounting. I really enjoyed the scenes when you had like Marilyn McCoo from The Fifth Dimension, right, and other surviving members of these bands watching this footage again, because they hadn't seen it. They hadn't seen it since it happened.
Oh, that's right.
And then you get like these festival goers too that were there, and a lot of them young kids who remember it, like, the biggest block party. I think one person refers to it as like, one big cookout, one big cookout, which is what it was. And you get the sense too, because the one man who attended it even says too, he's like, I've told stories about this thing, but I have no evidence of it. He's like, people think I'm crazy. I feel like I was starting to think I'm crazy, because it's just, you don't have any, like artifacts from it. It's not something that's commonly known. You really had to be there. And it makes you wonder how many other events, there can't be very many, but there have to be several. How many other events were these massive ostensible turning points in the country, at least for a specific demographic, a specific subset of people, that you never hear about? And I think that's the shot. Like, that's the thing that Summer of Soul makes you wonder. And it's kind of paradoxical because you won't know unless they're brought to your attention. But it's something to consider, because if this gigantic thing could get lost to the recesses of history, what the hell else is out there demanding a documentary and preventing it from erasure?
300,000 people attended this thing over the course of its run, and we still never heard about it. It took place literally in the biggest city in the U.S., and we didn't hear about this thing. Meanwhile, at some other random field, all these rock things were going on. And, you know, I don't want to bash Woodstock too much. Woodstock's still pretty damn awesome. But yeah, just the fact that, you know, we didn't give this its proper due. And if, you know, if there was a flood and all the footage was lost to a flood, or the building demolished or whatever, or if Questlove just never came around to it, it might as well have never happened, right? And it's astounding that when people say we need to, particularly when we talk about Black issues, right? Not that we can talk about it too much representatively, but when people talk about, you know, remembering Black stories, remembering women's stories, remembering Asian, all stories and all this history, this is what we're talking about. Because watching this thing, it, like, in addition to the incredible directing and cinematography and the feel of it all, just seeing all the footage and just seeing all these figures, this amazing thing, and like proving to the world that it actually did happen. It gave me this raw sense of jubilance, but also like this low level of like anger, you know, where it's like, what the hell were we doing not talking about this so much? And it's just so, in the political context of it all, with Jesse Jackson being featured heavily in this documentary, is just you sit back and you think about it, you know, all this history from hundreds of years ago, where, you know, talking about slaves or veterans or all these, you know, war stories and whatnot, you know, that seems so long ago. 1969, the farther we get from it, at the same time, it feels younger. It gets younger. And this documentary has absolutely made that time period so young and so timeless and so beautiful at the same time. I don't know, man.
If you want to talk about a pivotal year, I mean, we just went through one that felt like a whole ass decade, you know, and I think we're still feeling the repercussions of it. But when it comes to Summer of Soul, just like the politics and the music are so inextricably linked, and as the movie goes on, they become inextricably linked, especially with that Nina Simone finale of the documentary too. We'll touch on that in a bit, but the context here is just as important as the actual event. Obviously, you had Woodstock that it would happen the same year and get all the media coverage, but you had John F. Kennedy and Malcolm X. They'd been dead for years, but they remained in the collective minds of a country as well. You had Martin Luther King Jr., who was killed not even a year prior to this thing. And also, don't forget, the United States found its way to the damn moon that year. Like,
yeah.
And the crazy thing is, too, one of the best scenes in this thing is when, like, the documentary juxtaposes the footage of like the moon landing with the festival in a way. And like, you see the reaction, like the Black community don't care. And like, this is their history being made at Mount Morris Park in Harlem. The moon landing don't mean jack. I mean, quite honestly, the moon landing didn't mean really much for any, you know, one individual, you know, common person, especially not the Black community, which felt disproportionately and still feels disproportionately represented and treated. So like that juxtaposition in the movie is very telling. And that's one of my favorite things about the movie, is the way it shows that.
You know, it's funny. They actually managed to find probably the most eloquent speaking person in the audience there talk about the moon landing, and it's like, yeah, no, it's cool for science. I'm going to be honest with you, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, all that money, and we're still poor as shit over here in Harlem. Are you kidding me?
Seriously?
What? And you know what? And again, the fact that this footage could not be sold, or these broadcast rights could not be sold, no one wanted to pick it up. It sat in the basement for years. No one wanted to even bother remembering about it until Questlove or whoever came along. It's like, dude, they were vindicated in those feelings by the simple fact that it took a documentary in 2021 to come out for people to remember this damn thing. Oh boy, and it's like at first I was like, oh man, they're gonna go after the moon landing. Oh, how's that gonna go? Nope, completely vindicated. I get it.
It's true. And, for as much as this festival clearly did, at least, you know what I mean, for the often battered and shunned community of Harlem to this day, it also did a lot for the performers. And I think most significantly, it's hard to pinpoint one, but I think that this festival really meant a lot to the Fifth Dimension.
Yeah.
Who, of course, responsible for that great hair-inspired tune, that Aquarius / Let the Sun Shine In, which was one of the biggest, if not the biggest songs of 69 that year too. Number one, love their outfits in their performance, number one. Number two, they bodied that. Number three, Marilyn McCoo is still gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
And number four, the Fifth Dimension, if this was their moment to really come face to face with the Black community, insofar because they were subjected to so much criticism about their vocal harmonies sounding too white.
So that's wow.
And that's shocking. And if you kind of know the Fifth Dimension, I you know what I mean? I'm not an expert on them, but I knew that was one of the more common complaints. It was like the opposite of the Rick Astley effect. Everybody thought Rick Astley was Black when Never Gonna Give You Up came out. And if you it's not as visual, it wasn't as visual of an era back then in the 60s or even the 80s. So unless you saw the music video, you really didn't know what the artist looked like, or a magazine. You couldn't just Google the artist and figure out what they looked like. So there was that element though. But the Fifth Dimension got a lot of flack for that back in the day. And this was their day to put a face to the name.
They got a lot of flack from their own Black community, but also at the same time, and not that this is necessarily a good thing, but I thought a fun thing where it's like, yeah, they all also white record producers or whatever, or radio hosts were like, oh yeah, this is cool. It's cool. It's a white pop group. Oh wait, what? They're Black? Oh, too late. It's already spinning on the air. So I guess they got some small little bit of vindication there. But also, I'm gonna make this recommendation. Listen to the track "No Love in the Room" by the Fifth Dimension. I love that track. It's like a slight bit of cheese. To be honest with you, Fifth Dimension kind of has that small undercurrent throughout a lot of their stuff. But "No Love in the Room," you want to they have this white sounding pop sound. But damn, they want to talk about issues of talk about a lot of in the Black community. There's a lot of supposed family issues as well. They sing about that in the track "No Love in the Room," and it's like, god damn, this hits hard. And you look at the lyrics for that thing, and it's funny because it still has this disco kind of esque funk sound to it, but it hits deep. And yeah, honestly, highlighting them, but also a lot of other artists. Sly and the Family Stone is not obscure by any means, but you kind of unappreciated these days. And not at the top of everyone's list. People talk a lot about B.B. King, Stevie Wonder, Nina Simone, and rightfully so, they talk about that in the documentary. But yeah, highlighting the other artists too that a lot of people don't, are underappreciated, like the Staple Singers, which if you're into this stuff, you'll definitely know who they are. But for a lot of people who are discovering this sound, yeah, Fifth Dimension, Staple Singers, and Sly and the Family Stone, I'm glad they got their due, at least in the context of this documentary.
Absolutely. Mahalia Jackson, too. God, can that woman sing the phone book? She could sing the phone book and make it sound amazing. That's an emotional scene with her and Mavis Staples. That's I was not ready for that, that impact.
Dude, can we talk about can we talk about how Mavis Staples did a duet with Mahalia freaking Jackson? And they sang in mourning of MLK. That is the Blackest shit. And that is so cool. That's so empowering. It's jubilant and also mournful, but it's just...
And it was MLK's favorite hymn, too. Precious Lord, Take My Hand.
Oh my God. And again, we never talked about this.
The Black legacy in that whole scene is shattering. And it's even sadder to think, this is the first we're all seeing it, pretty much, for lack of a better term. This is the first we're all seeing it. And it's and it's harrowing to say the least. Like, if nothing else, just for the vocal prowess of Mavis and Mahalia, but like just the sheer talent and the impact of that. Because this, like I said, I don't remember the exact timeline, but it was just a several months after MLK had been assassinated.
Oh shit!
It was just
really?
several months after. Yeah, because he was assassinated. What was it? The end of '68, wasn't it?
Oh my
It was the
god!
tail end
Yeah,
of I think it was the tail end of '68. MLK was killed, and then this thing kicked off in
less
like
than a year.
April.
Definitely less
Yeah, it
than
was
a
less
year.
than a year after MLK. JFK obviously had been dead for years, and say Malcolm X was killed years prior. But I mean, it was still. I mean, you're talking. It was. I mean, we talk about how not long ago the civil rights movement was. This was 5 years. You know what I mean? This is 5 years after X and JFK were killed, and then you're talking months after MLK, and they come out with that. Like, that was a shockingly poignant, beautiful, beautiful moment.
I think honestly, like talking about the '60s in general, you think we'd get tired of it now, and you certainly can. I wouldn't fault you, but at the same time, yeah, like I said earlier, it's such a timeless period. So much happened that honestly, if you thought it was the end of the world, in some back of your mind kind of way, I get it. And the way people talk about the 60s, and in particular 1969, after all these people had been assassinated and after all this upheaval, Fred Hampton, everything that had happened in that decade, I kept thinking to myself, is this how people are going to talk about 2020, 2016 to 2020? These tumultuous times as well during the period of the pandemic. Just thinking like on a kind of a removed macro sense too. It is astounding that we're also living in that history. But goddamn, 1969. Holy hell! I'm also one thing that was very nuanced that I'm glad the documentary went into. I didn't even think about this until it brought it up. Really, was how before the 60s, particularly 1969, the term to talk about an African American person was Negro. That was the standard way to do it. Black people would call themselves Negro as a point of empowerment as well. But once they go into the documentary, once this year happens, and once these social revolutions come in, yeah, they just stuck to the word black. There's like, let's embrace it, because black can be such a bad thing in so many contexts, like in Christianity or in so many variants of art to a degree as well. No, we're gonna go with the word black, and we're gonna embrace it, and we're just gonna own it, and they did. Amazing.
Yeah, this is a really well done documentary, and I mean, it's hard to. It's always tough to review documentaries because generally, I'm always of the belief, even as a film critic, that like if you like the subject, you're probably going to like the documentary in most cases. But like, the thing is, a big credit has to go to Questlove and the filmmakers behind this and the producers behind this, because not only is this movie, really, shedding light on an event that has been, for lack of a better term, almost completely erased from the recesses of history. But he's also he's tasked with making it a cogent, festival. And this was not a day-long thing. This was multiple weeks. You know what I mean? This was a multi-week festival that took place over the summer of '69. And he does a great job in making it coherent and making it investing. I would say, like, it's a petty gripe to say that it does feel a little long, just because of the fact that, like, we haven't really heard of this event before, and this is the first that many of us are seeing it. But I think that, like, the fact that it also shows these performances in complete length, I do worry that for some people streaming this, it's going to wind up being background noise a little bit. It's going to wind up being, you know what I mean, just kind of like a thing to have on. That's just my assumption. I'm not harping too much on it. It's just something I thought of. But I mean, this doc doesn't get any points off for just being comprehensive in that regard, and also giving way to the present too, and showing people who attended it and performed there, their reactions to seeing this for the first time.
Yeah. Hey, I hope, can we just see the concerts themselves? Like, release all 12 hours of it or whatever? I'd watch some of that. I'm not going to lie. Like, just give me some of the raw footage. Hell yeah, I'm down for this.
Yeah, I would take the raw footage. I really would. I would buy a set. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I would buy a set just to have it, like just to have it and watch it. I mean, because I can't get over the music in this is so good. Now, selfishly, and I know my history at least to this point. Selfishly, I was hoping and I knew the lineup going into it, but I kept wanting like the Daz Band or the Gap Band to come in. They didn't come out until the '70s. They didn't form till the '70s. But I kept like waiting. I really wanted to hear. There's a point in time watching this movie. I'm like, oh my god, you know what would hit right now? Can we chase like Gladys Knight and the Pips with "You Dropped a Bomb on Me"? Like, like there's a part of me because this is like soul, it's funk, it's pop, it's jazz. It's just a melting pot of different sounds, all while being respectfully and proudly black. And you don't see that a lot, especially in this era.
I think they started in 1976, so I think it's a little too Daz
Well, that's what
Band.
I said. I did Daz Band and the Gap Band. I said they didn't start until the mid '70s.
Oh, okay,
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. Yeah, but I was like, damn it, "You Dropped a Bomb on Me" would hit right now. And I know I'm going even way later, but you know what? It also got me thinking too. It's another song I love. You should know this song. It's later. I think this was the '80s by then. It's another great song is "Kool and the Gang, Too Hot."
Oh, dude. I think I'm not good with song titles sometimes, particularly with Kool and the Gang, just because some of their
run for shelter, gotta run for shade. It's too hot. That song is so smooth it should be illegal. That song is so smooth it should be like it is impossibly. It's almost like yacht soul in a way, like yacht rock.
I know Kool and the Gang changed my life when their song "Summer Madness" got included in the GTA Vice City soundtrack, and that song changed my life forever. I'm not gonna lie. Like if you had to 100 songs that influenced Dominic Guanzon, one of them would be "Summer Madness." I don't know where it'd be on the list, but it'd definitely be there. That was a revelation when I was young and I heard that. Holy hell.
I don't mean to take a tangent.
Oh no, please.
But yeah.
I'm happy to talk some music.
This was a lovely documentary, though. Worthy, in my opinion, not only possibly one of the best documentaries of the year, has a good chance to be one of the best films of the year. It's that good. It's that deep, and it's that really surprising. Really, really would like to see this thing get a nod at best documentary feature come time for the Oscars.
Halfway through it, I'm like, there's no freaking way this won't get. This is too good, too kinetic, too important. Because sometimes documentaries, I'm not too into this too much, but sometimes I feel like this is too relevant to be. And I feel like that's why it gets nominated. That might be shorting everyone involved in that process, but this is just too good. I don't know. I'm very biased in that sense, but. Yeah, man. I hope it does at least get nominated, if not win outright. But we'll see with the other nominations. I need to watch more documentaries after watching.
I do too.
Yeah, after watching this,
I do too.
Because honestly,
I used to watch a lot more.
Documentaries they're like some of the finest pieces of journalism and historical remembrance that really exist in our collective consciousness. And what Questlove has done here. Is an astounding work of journalism, of historical preservation, and to do it for New Yorkers, for the Black community, and for the Puerto Rican community and the Latino community, because there was a whole section of that. There's a whole part of New York called East Harlem, which is just filled with Latino pride. So I learned. But so much beauty here that could have no offense, but honestly, could you imagine getting the call? It's like, hey, we have this massive, storage of this concert that has literally never been televised or no one remembers it. Do you want this? Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. That's like sitting on your lap. That's like a treasure chest suddenly showing up at your front door. Hell yeah! But of course, a lot of work went into making it what it is. So yeah, to Questlove.
And I mean, you're talking about something. Imagine Questlove getting in touch with this and finding it, and then watching it and viewing the countless hours, and then seeing Jesus Christ, man, you're not watching Smokey Joe and the River Bandits over here. It's like Gladys Knight and the Pips. It's the Fifth Dimension. It's
BB freaking
Mavis
King.
Staples, BB King. just unbelievable. Like, I'm like, and this thing is forgotten. It did air, I guess, an hour-long specials a few times on a local New York affiliate. But like when 1 o'clock in the morning after, like anti-aging cream infomercials, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, I give this a strong 3.5 out of 4 stars. Probably might even bump it up to 4 later on, if I rewatch it or so, because I would like to watch this again. If nothing else, just have it on, because I think it's also just a very positive, like, lift your spirits type of movie. We got Hamilton last year on Disney Plus on the 4th of July, and that made for a very interesting yet difficult 4th of July in a complicated year. It really did. I remember talking about it with you guys on Sleepless. That was just that was probably the worst 4th of July I've ever had, just in terms of just like the mood. Like, there was no reason to feel pride last 4th of July. But with this thing, man, I think the release of this is timed perfectly, because it comes out on the 4th of July, or it comes out the weekend of the 4th of July. Stuff's opening up again. Summer really feels like summer now. People are getting vaccinated. Feels like the news, at least in America too, is getting better and better by the week. Like, this feels like all these town festivals. I've been to like 4 town festivals, and it's not even mid-July yet. Like, this feels like you come home and keep the party going with this thing. It's a strong 3.5 out of 4 stars for me with Summer of Soul. Really has a great shot to be one of my favorite films of the year.
Yeah, man. This is honestly right up my alley. This is history, this is politics, and this is music at its finest. This is the strongest possible 4 out of 4 stars that I could possibly give, because again, what Questlove has done for everyone and everything, to be able to channel all this kinetic, legendary energy and gift it to the world, really share this gift with the world is beautiful, man. And just watching a lot of it, I have my jaw like agape. I'm like, again, in the back of my mind, like, if you imagine how we grew up, or at least I grew up, knowing what Woodstock was to America, how Woodstock was broadcasted to America, and what it means in our cultural consciousness, in the zeitgeist, all of that. Literally in 4th grade, learning about it in our social studies history books. It's in there. And thinking, if all of that had never been, Woodstock happened maybe, but what we know about it had never been. That is what we are discovering here with this beautiful piece of work. So Summer of Soul, my strongest 4 out of 4 stars. Probably my favorite movie of the year, just on the subject matter alone, but also what Questlove and the film preservationists, the people who revived this footage. I'm thinking of a technical word here, but the technicians who did so much here to make this what it was. Hats off to all of you. Amazing.
Because really, this is film preservation at its finest. This is like what the National Film Registry was created for, and just all these organizations dedicated to that. They're remastering the restoring, the preservation of footage, and it shows you the power of cinema too in that way. Just the raw reactions of singers and festival goers seeing this stuff. This is why film matters at the end of the day, and you see that with this movie throughout.
Between this and They Shall Not Grow Old, which is Peter Jackson's World War I film restoration of a lot of that footage, this stuff, it matters. It's important. It's probably some of the most important things you could do possibly in the world of cinema, and proven here once again by Summer of Soul.
Great review, man. Summer of Soul's now in theaters and streaming on Hulu. Again, highly recommend that you watch it. This was a really good way to start my Saturday morning, too. I watched it on Saturday. It's a really good way to start my Saturday morning. Get you some of the songs, too. Get you jumping. And then it culminates and sort of apexes at the end when Nina Simone takes the stage. And it's like you feel like you're on the cusp of this revolution. Just the rhetoric and by that point, the music and the politics have just conjoined to be so inextricably linked by the end of it. You feel this like explosion of energy. It really is like a firework, no pun intended.
I was thinking about who the hell is going to close this thing. Maybe not in the actual Harlem Cultural Festival, but in the documentary, it's like, what artist could they possibly choose to close? Oh, Nina Simone. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. We're good. That's it.
To be young, gifted, and black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, yeah, I ain't gonna argue with that. I ain't gonna argue with that.
Perfect summation of everything here.
She did her 1-2 thing on that,
Yeah, just a little bit,
We'll move forward now. Second week in a row, we are touching on Quentin Tarantino. We're not going to take super long on this topic, but it is worth mentioning. Also, update from last week. Might as well throw this in there. Gives me a chance to talk about this book again. I am on page 176 now. I'm really hauling ass through this book. I started it last Friday, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I was talking about a Dom with you pre-show. I just love the mass market paperback. Like these film novelizations, these like tiny compact things. I always just really love this style. And I'm reminded how much I love this style.
Just the covers, just the cover alone. It's like, damn, this is taking me back to like the 90s, going to O'Hare Airport and seeing that at the store, right?
I know, right? Like, we'll do our thing now. Like I said, I'm on page 176. And I'm going to do the thing we did last week. I don't know if we're going to keep this up as a thing. Dom suggested we do this. I'm going to open up to a random page. I'm going to go towards the back of the book now and see if we find an F-bomb or an obscenity of some sort.
The spiciest word. Find the spiciest word.
347. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Nobody on a Cougar set calls cut but George. Kate fucking Hepburn wouldn't call fucking cut, but Rick Dalton calls fucking cut. There we go. That's been Find the F-bomb and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I found 3 for you in one sentence.
This got to be a bit, man. This got to be a constant thing. A recurring...
for as long as I read this, for as long as I keep reading this, we'll do this. Because I want to hopefully finish it by next weekend. But because it is long, it's 400 pages. But I've been making a good time. I've been reading like a chapter or 2 a day.
Quentin, just the out of context Quentin Tarantino writing is so good.
Yeah. Let me tell you, he is really the Ayn Rand of writers in terms of why use 10 words when you can use 50. In terms of extensive detail, not politics. Just in terms of the Ayn Rand of writing, like excessive detailing.
I don't know. I think Quentin Tarantino would be a big fan of that free market feat.
Yeah, no kidding, right? I liked him on Bill Maher, too. This is totally irrelevant to the topic, but I loved him on Bill Maher because Bill Maher was talking about how great this was and how much he admires Tarantino as a filmmaker. And Tarantino goes, imagine me going to my publisher finally with when Harper Perennial signed me. He's like, imagine them being so excited to sign me to this 2-book deal and then telling them, I know all the money's in hardcover and like limited editions, but I'm like, guys, want to make a mass market paperback. Let's sell it for $8.
He can do that.
He's like, can you imagine their excitement? But anyway, Quentin Tarantino's in the news. He has purchased the historic LA theater Vista Theater. He said it on the podcast with Dak Shepard. Fun fact, Dak Shepard, if you want to know what he's doing, he's got a podcast called Armchair Expert. I feel like every 5 years, Dak Shepard finds his way into the headlines again. There's Without a Paddle, and then there's like everything else. Hit and Run was good though, but moreover. But yeah, he said he's plans to reopen the Vista Theater, which is really just laid dormant. He wants to reopen it by Christmas. And this is the second theater Tarantino owns. He owns the New Beverly Cinema, which, fun fact, is referenced not only in the movie, but in the book as well for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's owned the New Beverly Cinema in LA since 2007. He bought that around the same time Grindhouse was coming out, Planet Terror and Death Proof, around the same time, which feels fitting.
You can't see it right now on the screen, Steve, but I have a picture of Quentin Tarantino in front of his Beverly Cinema, and on the marquee is Grindhouse Fest, Black Shampoo, and Human Tornado. That's what's on the marquee.
That's funny. I see the photo now on the stream. Yeah, it's very fitting because Tarantino as well, he really wants to continue to show, like, in a way, we're talking film preservation once again. He wants to show older films, but I like how he put it to Shepard. He said, older films that you can like hold a 4-night engagement for and people will come. But he also wants to keep it, like movies that were shot on film. He wants to keep it celluloid, which is a rapidly deteriorating art. I think, beyond whatever, it's his theater now. He can do whatever the hell he wants with it. Both New Beverly and Vista are going to have permanent financial backing. That goes without saying. But I'm surprised more filmmakers don't do this. Like, how nobody bought like the Alamo Draft House, or what is it, Cinerama, one of those. I'm not a big LA guy, so I don't really know. Like Cinerama in LA. How has no filmmaker footed the bill for that? Like, just been the theater's landlord. Even if they were to outsource it to like a board or something, or a small committee, and be like, do whatever the hell you want with it. But here's the money I'm putting aside just to keep this thing active. And that's where, love or hate Tarantino, whatever you think of him, you have to admire that. Like, this is a guy who obviously makes movies, and a lot of which are based on classic Hollywood, right down to certain scenes. Spoiler alert, the dance scene in Pulp Fiction was not created by Tarantino. That was a riff off of an Italian movie, but nobody wants to have that discussion.
Oh, he's one of those people who steals a lot, but makes it great.
A lot. Makes it great,
like,
don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah, and I'm not saying that as a bad thing necessarily, because it's like, what's the saying? Good artists borrow, great artists steal. And Tarantino has done his own Ocean's trilogy of stealing in his work, and I love it. So, hell yeah.
And he at least does something with it, makes it artful and whatnot. But like, you can't deny the guy loves Hollywood, loves film history. He wants to keep it alive. His next book is going to be a work of film criticism, which is funny because anybody who's read this Once Upon a Time in Hollywood novel knows that basically you got the taste of Tarantino's films during like the 20-page second chapter, where we get to learn the background of Cliff Booth. There's like no dialogue in the second chapter either. There's a little bit of a scene setting, and then it's just pretentious film rants. We even get Cliff Booth's ranking of Akira Kurosawa's films in this thing. Like, I'm like, he's not gonna, but don't ever change Tarantino. It is cool he bought the Vista Theater. Any closing thoughts though, or what say you on the matter, Dom?
Yeah, so he plans on showing not only the old stuff, which is perfect. Honestly, if we just played the old stuff, I'm like, yeah, this is Tarantino's like theater. Hell yeah, I'm here to watch probably Fistful of Dollars for the millionth time in this thing. Sure. But he also wants to show new stuff as long as it was shown on film. So a shit ton of Christopher Nolan. That's what we're going to be seeing. Yeah. Tenet, Dark Knight trilogy. Probably that's actually probably too new for him as well. Honestly, I just love Tarantino's brand of like, feet aside, just love his brand of just being a kind of an elitist asshole, but in like a really rough and tumble kind of way that makes it really fun. Where it's like, yeah, this is a time. This is a good break from everything. And he's not my favorite director. We could do our whole spiel on how if you think Quentin Tarantino is your favorite director, you're probably not watching too many films, which is an opinion from my friend, but I will not name them. But aside from that, I love Tarantino, not gonna lie.
I do too. I can criticize him. I look forward to all his stuff.
Of course, he's got his problems in in his style. If you don't like his style, I understand that. But like, for me, it's the perfect break from like regular movies. You know what I mean? In a way. But yeah, the fact that he has this theater now that is perfectly on brand. It's a little snooty the way he's taking it too, a little bit, and I'm totally down for that. And yeah, as you mentioned, because like production companies, studios, they can't own theaters, because that would go back to the Paramount decision. I love name drop. I like to be an elitist asshole and name drop the Paramount decision. But individual directors, sure, go for it. Straight to the source, baby.
That's not more common. Between like Alamo Draft House and a couple other like really historic theaters, especially in the wake of the pandemic that have closed, I'm surprised more filmmakers don't step up. Like, I'm waiting for somebody like Kevin Smith or somebody. Yeah. You know what I mean? To like do that. They got the money. They have the money to do that. And I mean, it just creates a larger like history for like a legacy for you too, especially somebody like Tarantino who keeps insisting he's retiring after his next movie. Somebody like Tarantino who, like You can say what you want. He sounds pretty definitive about retiring because he's like, I don't. He talks about people like Don Siegel and stuff who went on to direct like ho hum movies before they passed after making a career. And he goes, I want to go out on top and stuff, which I'm sure he does. He's almost 60, but at the same time, then it's like, what are you gonna have? Like, even he was on Bill Maher recently, and even I like Bill Maher is like trying to talk him out of retirement, and then finally he just gives up and says, "You're gonna be fucking bored." like, but for something like that, he's got to wonder about his legacy. I mean, it's kind of set in some ways, but he's got to wonder about like the lasting impact, man. And if you can own a theater, let alone multiple historic sites in LA, and keep the tradition of film alive, that garners a lot of respect from me, and I think a lot of other people.
If he did retire and he was just the guy who started buying up all these historic theaters all over the country, not even LA, but just all over the country. Like if like the Tivoli here in Downers Grove, the Tivoli Theater was going out of business and Quentin Tarantino snatched that up, hell yeah, I'm down for that. And then he just becomes a guy who just retired, shows up to all these theaters that he owns in like slippers and a robe. I'm like, yeah, you're living off your millions. Just go for it. I don't care. Yeah, this is awesome.
For real. Like, like 30th or whatever it is now, 30th, 35th anniversary of Pulp Fiction, Q&A, private screening. You know what I mean? Like, that would be awesome. That would be sweet, man. It would make these road shows a lot more feasible for him too. Like, you know what I mean? If he's going to do these kind of events, like, and stuff like that, those like movie road shows that, Kevin Smith does a lot of those too for like new movies. That's because nobody wants to release his in 600 theaters now.
You mentioned Dak Shepard's podcast and Kevin Smith also has a podcast, Fat Man on Batman. But like, what if Quentin Tarantino had a podcast? How crazy would that be? Or mundane, or surprisingly mundane, and just off kilter it would be. I would pay to listen to at least one episode of a Quentin Tarantino directed podcast.
I need to listen to more of this. I only listened to about the first 20 minutes of this Dak Shepard one. And it's funny. I was telling you too. Somebody said an old teacher friend of mine listened to the podcast. She directed my attention towards it. She goes, "You remind me a lot of Quentin Tarantino as a person. Just how animated and passionate you get, and how opinionated you get." And I'm not gonna lie, having watched him on Bill Maher and now like listen to this podcast, it's like, God damn it, he is kind of like me, isn't he? He's got like this like squirrely energy to him.
That's a good. I was trying to find the word. Squirrely is the perfect term for him.
Joy, Well, I'll take that. People tell me I've heard from multiple people I look like Michael Rappaport.
It's an endearing
so I will take Tarantino over Michael Rappaport in terms of personality. Like that is a compliment. I take that. I take this latter as a compliment. And on that note, that's where we'll end things today. Sleepless with Steve really ended almost on the dot at 8:00 over here. Dominic, I want to thank you once again, filling the shoes of Joe over here on the production side of things. I did a great job, man, on that. And you're going to be doing it all over again next weekend, because next weekend we've got Black Widow. We've got Black Widow, the movie 10 years too late, is finally coming out, especially technically a year late now with COVID, because we were supposed to get it last year. That's in theaters. That's going to be available on Disney Plus Premier Access for the extra $30 rental fee. But I'll be checking it out in theaters Friday afternoon. Dom, I assume you'll see it this weekend. And we'll have our first Marvel movie to talk about. And you know what? I did not look this up. Shame on me. But I was going to bed last night, and I really thought about getting up and looking it up, but I didn't. Was Spider-Man the last Marvel movie released? Was that the last one? That
sounds so. Obviously, the Disney Plus shows, we're not counting that necessarily.
We're about the
feature films. Yeah,
film.
That sounds right. I'm gonna say yes.
I think it was, because it wasn't Endgame. Spider-Man Far From Home came after Endgame. So I wonder, I think that had to be the last Marvel movie, so we haven't had a Marvel movie in eons. So, we went last year without one, which was almost felt a little strange on top of a million other strange things, like it felt very strange not to get a Marvel movie last year. So we're definitely kind of looking forward to this one. It was Far From Home, July 2nd, 2019. So it's actually going to be over 2 years now, because Spider-Man Far From Home came out July 2nd of 19. This one comes out July 9th. So this is going to be over 2 years since the last Marvel movie, and we're going to be reviewing it next week on Sleepless, along with discussing a handful of other things. Me and my good buddy Dominic Guanzon, again, filling in for Joe Viso on the technical side of things. Appreciate y'all watching. More highlights can be found on the YouTube channel on which you're currently at right now, and also different highlights will also be posted on stevepulaski.com. You can check out my brand new website if you'd be so kind. That does it for Sleepless with Steve. We'll be back next week with a review of Black Widow. Until then, stay safe.